Before we start this episode, I want to share a super exciting offer with you. From now until the end of January 2026, you can get 26% off the cost of a full year in Boss Your Socials Club. There are 3 tiers to choose from depending on the level of support you want, and every tier gives you access to a supportive community, accountability, and all the tools, templates, and strategies that you need to market your business on social media, show up, and actually grow your business without the overwhelm. So if you're ready to finally prioritize your socials, and if you're ready to make a real difference in your business, Boss Your Socials Club is here, and now is the best time to join. To grab your discount, head to www.beheardsocials.com/kickstart. Choose the annual option for your preferred tier, tap on Have a Coupon at checkout, and enter the code KICKSTART. That's KICKSTART. Let's kickstart your new year, get your socials working for you, and make 2026 your easiest, most organised year yet. In the meantime, though, let's get back to the episode that you came for. Today, I am joined by the brilliantly wonderful Leah Christian, founder and CEO of the House of Hormones, women's health advocate, menopause wellness coach, and psychologist. We dive into the very real challenges women face with their hormones, the confusing, the frustrating, and the often overlooked. We discuss menopause, how to advocate for yourself, and how to tune into your hormones to be the best you can be in business and in life. Leah is so kind and generous with her expertise and her time, and this episode is packed with practical insights, encouragement, and a reminder that understanding your body is one of the best ways to show up for yourself. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hi, I'm your host, Becky McAvoy. I'm a multi-award-winning social media marketer and the dreamer behind Be Heard Socials and the Boss Your Socials Club. I created this podcast to help women like you simplify your life and grow a business on your terms without the overwhelm. If you're ready for some no BS advice, practical tips, and honest chats that make social media and business feel lighter and more doable, you are in exactly the right place. Right then, let's get started with this week's episode. Hi, Leah. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Hi, Becky. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here today. Really excited about this chat.
Oh, you are so welcome. Honestly, I am just as excited. I have spent the last few weeks telling people that I'm going to be talking to you because there's so many women that I think will benefit, that I know personally that will benefit from listening, and hopefully all the other people listening to show up and be heard. So yeah, I'm just really excited to chat to you. And what we are going to be talking about, because obviously I haven't actually said that yet, is hormones and all things hormones. So we're going to be talking mostly and focusing on advocating for yourself and tuning into your hormones to live your best life and run your best business. So yeah, like I said, I know I've told so many people about it. And I guess to give people listening a little bit of context of when I reached out to you, I went to the amazing Nikki Denson-Elliott's Wild Alive event in London in October last year, I think it was. And you ran a session there, and I went to that session all about hormones.
Yeah.
And I just loved everything you said. And I loved how practical a lot of what you said was.
Yeah. It was so lovely to meet you at the event, and such a big shout out to Nikki, because what an incredible event. And I just love being in a room with inspirational women that want to be proactive about their health, about their lives. It was such an empowering event and such an incredible atmosphere, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And like you said, I mean, exactly that. It was just a room full of women wanting to lift each other up, help each other, and just be amazing. It was just really, really inspirational.
She absolutely smashed it. She smashed it. What an incredible event. And it's just so exciting to see so many women doing so many more things like this and so many more exciting things in this space, whether it's empowerment, whether it's women's wellness. It's just incredible. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, and I think it's so key to running a business, isn't it? It's not just about the systems and the things and all the business things. Like, you are your key asset in the business. So you've got to look after yourself first. And that's why, like I said, I'm really excited to chat today just generally about hormones and how that can impact you and what you can kind of do about it, because I think there is a lot of information, or there's a lot more information out there now than there ever has been, but also there's almost so much information out there, it's hard to navigate what to listen to and what not to listen to, and almost you can become a little bit disillusioned with it because it all becomes too hard because you're getting so much information that it becomes like another thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely that, Becky. Exactly what you've just said. And that is the exact reason why I launched the House of Hormones. it was quite obvious that there was this dead space in between over information on, whether it was Instagram or any type of social media, and then such a lack of information even from our GPs, and women not being able to get appointments or being misdiagnosed, mismedicated. And so I really wanted to make the House of Hormones a really easily accessible place to get the information that you needed and the things that we weren't taught in school. And it's so crazy. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but it's so crazy that we weren't. And I think I am at a stage, where there's lots of changes. I'm 41 years old. There's lots of changes that women my age are going through. But I also have an 8-year-old daughter who's nearly 9. And I got my period when I was 9. So I'm really seeing it from both ends of the lack of education that we really get when we're young, and we still do today in 2025, and the fact that there's women, people don't know the perimenopausal symptoms very normally started around 35, and no one knows that. And when I met you, there was so much that you and I discussed about your own self and the different things that you were going through, and the lack of information and knowledge that you had, but also we're trying to get, but we're finding it really difficult. So even women that are searching and trying to get that information really struggle to get it, and then do feel overwhelmed with being told you need to take this supplement, or you need to do 10,000 steps a day, or you need to eat X amount of protein, or you need to do, and some of those things are true, but it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah, 100%. One of the things that you said to me at the time was like, obviously all of those things will help, but if you don't actually fix the core problem first, I don't know whether you worded it like that in terms of fix the problem, but if you don't actually get the help you need to balance your hormones or to do all of that, none of that really matters, because, I mean, not that it doesn't matter, but it's just, you're not actually fixing the problem. You're just sort of putting a plaster over it. And I feel like that's what I'd been doing for the previous 2 years, doing all of these things to try and be fitter, try and be healthier. And it's definitely helped, but it was just plastering over what the actual problem was.
That's right. And this is why we see so many women, and I can speak for people that are so close to me. I can speak for myself, but this is why we keep seeing so many women being mismedicated and being offered antidepressants when that is not what they need. And I am not antidepressants, by the way. I'm very much pro if and when they're needed. However, for hormonal imbalance, it could be so avoided if it was just recognized, and if there was more effort being put into helping women and helping women actually understand what's going on with their bodies, and what's deemed as what should be normal and what isn't, and when you should be seeking support and what that support should look like. And women have no clue what that means. I think, you mentioned at the start today, we're going to be talking about advocating for yourself. And this is such a big buzzword. And I love talking about this, even though it's a buzzword and it's a bit cliche, because I love saying, we can throw the word advocate for yourself, advocate for your friends, advocate for women. But what does it mean? No one actually knows what it means. So I could say it until I'm blue in the face, but nobody knows what it means. So if you're not going to explain what you mean by that, stop saying it. Whereas for me, advocating for yourself is that day when you were coming to that event and you weren't going to come and you nearly didn't come, but you advocated for yourself and you put yourself first. And so there's so many things that women can do. And it's like, just stacking these little bits of advocating for yourself, whether it's putting yourself first that day and realizing that choice to come, regardless of whatever else was going on in your life, was a huge turning point for you, because whether it was a conversation with me, whether it was the workshop, whether it was us chatting afterwards, whether it was me standing there and forcing you to make certain appointments and do certain things and write certain things down, that all came from you choosing you first. And sometimes women just don't know what that looks like, because it also looks different for each person. Okay. So if you're a mum, if you've got 2 kids, for example, like me, advocating for yourself can sometimes look like having a lie-in on a Saturday morning and refusing to feel guilty about it. That's advocating for yourself. It's all about these little things that you can do to take the pressure off yourself and start becoming your own biggest cheerleader. Women never never find it difficult to advocate for other people. In fact, we are the best at doing this. So think of a problem, everyone that's listening or watching this, and yourself, Becky, think of a problem that you struggle with. Right. So whether it's anxiety, whether it's car driving anxiety, you get anxious in the car, whether it's rage, you keep like having outbursts at the children, whether it's sleep, think of a problem that you have. Now switch it and imagine that it was your best friend or your mum or your daughter that had that problem, and think about what you would say to them. You would say, book the appointment. I don't care that you've seen the doctor 5 times, book another appointment, see a specialist, do this, do that. You would have some sort of advice and you would be forcing them to do it. Yet women really struggle to do that for themselves. So advocating for their husbands, their brothers, their mums, literally every single person, women are amazing at it. Advocating for themselves? Absolutely not. They put themselves last. And so we have been conditioned in society to constantly do this on so many different levels. And really, for me, advocating for yourself starts by unlearning that.
Yeah, and I really love all of what you said there. And there's so much in there. What you were saying around, because advocating for yourself looks different in different circumstances, doesn't it? I think if you looked at it really sort of like, when I first mentioned it at the beginning of this episode, like the initial thought is kind of like, well, advocating yourself by going to the doctors and telling them, this, that, and the other. But what you were saying around, having the lay in or putting yourself first or deciding to go to the event. But actually, one of the things that I did after I spoke to you at that event was, because what I was going to say was I booked an appointment almost immediately, but I actually didn't. My husband booked it for me. The first thing I did when I came home was said to him, like, I met this woman at this event and she said all this amazing stuff. She said, you must get an appointment and this is what you need to say at that appointment, all that kind of stuff. And he was like, are you going to book the appointment? I was like, no, I don't want to. It's just, and I don't know why. I think it was just the headspace that I was in at the time, where I felt overwhelmed at the time. We had lots of other stuff going on. But I actually said to him, will you do it for me? Like, will you please just ring the doctors? And I think some of it for me was an anxiety around the receptionist. They'd be like, oh God, it's that woman ringing again for another appointment. And I was like, well, you just get me the appointment. So he did that and he was fantastic. And actually I'd been to the doctors like a year before and I'd had a really bad experience there where I just got completely dismissed. The doctor was quite offensive, to be honest. And it really put me off. Like, I wouldn't go back because he was so dismissive. And it was about a year later that my husband was like, well, you need to do something about this. Like, you're going to have to go back. And he booked the appointment without actually telling me and was like, I just want you to go and talk to them again. And luckily that time round, I saw an incredible doctor who I insist on seeing now. And he had ordered me blood tests and certain things and whatever before I'd come to that conference. But when I came to the conference and you said, like, have this follow-up appointment because here's some of the things that you could ask for. Like I said, I asked him to book it and he did. And then on the morning, he said to me, do you want me to come with you? And I was like, well, I don't know. I was like, because that's a bit like, I feel like a child in the room. And I was actually, do you know what? Yeah, I do want you to come with me. And It was just like, that was a bit of, which I wouldn't have previously said was necessarily advocating for myself, but it just put me at ease a little bit. And it was almost ridiculously, because it's not like I'm lying in the room, but if I was saying it alongside him, he was almost sort of like, yeah, this is what's actually happening because I live with her and I see all of this stuff. Like, she's not, which I'm sure the doctor wouldn't have thought, but she's not a complete crank.
No. And you know what? There's a couple of things that you've said there, and I really want to highlight them because you're not the only person, and anyone listening to this, you will be shocked at how many women feel like this. Women feel like they are a burden. They feel like they're a burden to the receptionist. They think that people are going to think, didn't she call 2 weeks ago? Women feel judged for everything, right? We feel like we're a burden upon society. And again, it's been part of our conditioning. And so you have to fight against this. It's so important. And if it means bringing someone to your appointment, I say this all the time, do it. On average, the average is 10 appointments that women need to get before they're actually listened to. And I think a lot of women misunderstand the problems here with GPs, etc., because it's not the GP's fault. They actually haven't had the correct training. Okay. There hasn't been enough research done on women's bodies to start with. The medication that we're currently all taking is basically off studies that have been done on men's bodies. The GPs were not trained. So women's health specialists, which is who you should be asking to see, they've done extra training in this. And a lot of them have done it off their own back. A lot of these doctors that are specialists in women's health, they've gone and done this extra training off their own back, this extra reading off their own back, but it's not in their curriculum, if you like. So they don't have to learn about all these different symptoms. And so they don't know. And so that's the real problem here. It's not that the GPs are, gaslighting us. Let's face it, as women, we gaslight ourselves before we then go to the doctors and then are gaslit by the doctors. Okay, we like exactly like you did. You're a classic case. So am I. So is nearly every single other woman that's listening to this. We will have dismissed ourselves 100 times before we'll actually pick up the phone and go and get those blood tests done. And do you know what? In terms of hormones, a lot of the time, the blood tests don't always show what the problem is. So that's another problem within itself, and it's not very encouraging for us. For example, if you started having perimenopausal symptoms and you went to the doctor and had a blood test, you're very likely to hear the words normal quite a lot. But what a lot of women don't realize is the scale of normal, might be between 7 and 3 on a scale of 1 to 10. And where you might have used to lie beside around a 6, you might now lie around a 4, but nobody's talking about that because you still fall into normal. So, that's a big problem. And also the other thing with perimenopausal symptoms and hormonal imbalance in general is our hormones shift like every single day. So even if I had a blood test this morning and then I had a blood test this evening and we were checking, certain levels, they would massively differ in one day. So it's really difficult to get a gauge. And that's why women must be believed by their symptoms. And the problem is it starts with us. And we're not even believing ourselves to get ourselves in and have those conversations. And like you said, you needed a bit of backup. But you know what? If you needed the backup and you needed your husband there to have the conversations, then that's what you need to do. You have to do whatever you have to do to get the job done, because no longer can we be dismissed. No longer can we dismiss ourselves. There is so much that can be done to help ourselves. And also there's so much more research that needs to be done. So every woman needs to be speaking up because we don't have to feel like this.
Yeah. And I think going back to the sort of advocating for yourself point, it was interesting with my husband because, like I said, he is incredible. And obviously he's made both those appointments. Like, he's very supportive, but he's also, and we've spoken about this, because he said, sometimes I don't know what to do because I pride myself on being a independent, strong woman. Like, I'm proudly raging, sometimes feminist, all that kind of things. And he said in the past, I sort of wish I'd done some stuff sooner, but in the past I didn't, because I didn't want to look like I was sort of looking after you, or like I said, like, do you want me to come to the thing or whatever? And I actually said to him, please just ask me the questions, because I'll just turn around and say no if I don't want you to come. But sometimes I don't want to ask. And so I suppose it's having those, whether it's with your husband, your partner, or a friend or whoever, but with the people that you trust, to just say, do you know what? I am advocating for so many different people, like, especially as a mum to 2 kids and all that kind of things. I just need someone to do it, like, to help me do it for myself.
Exactly. And I'm pleased you brought that up as well, because with men, I think, like, I'm huge on bringing men into the conversation and being totally inclusive. I grew up in a house with 3 brothers. I have a son, I have a husband. So, I'm massive about bringing men into the conversation. And I always say, if men knew how little women know about their own bodies, they wouldn't feel as out of place in these conversations, because they don't know that we actually haven't been educated. I know we have the in real life teachings of, our own periods or our own cycles, and we have our own experience. But the amount of women that I speak to that can't even name the 4 stages of their cycle, they don't know the names of the 4 stages, and they can't list me what they might be feeling emotionally, what they might be seeing physically, what they might be, they can kind of take a stab. But women don't actually have the education around this. And if men knew that, I think so many more men would have conversations, but they kind of really feel like it's an area that they're not allowed to touch. And what I see is when you do invite them into the conversation, they do welcome being invited. Like they do come into the conversation, because you would think, oh, a lot of them don't want to talk about it. And I have seen a lot of men like that as well. But I do see that a lot of men do want to talk about it. And a lot of men have a lot of questions and want to understand it a bit more. And the second that you answer those questions, well, wow, it just opens up a whole different conversation and a whole different level of support and understanding that hasn't been tapped into. Listen, you don't know what you don't know. So how can we expect them to understand how we feel in our luteal phase, or if we're having a bout of perimenopausal anxiety or rage, or how are we expecting them to know that we've gone from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds and it's our hormones? Because they don't experience that. And I think it's important that we remember that. And that's not me, like I'm all for girl power and, having a little husband bashing every now and again. But it's important to remember that they just don't experience it in the same way as us. And I think it just, once you can kind of have those conversations and welcome men in, it just opens up a whole new world of understanding, of empathy, and also allowing them to advocate for you, like in your case.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, my husband for probably a long time prior had wanted to help, but didn't want to step on toes. So like literally the advocating for yourself can just be, like I said, it doesn't have to be your husband or your partner or whoever, but just someone that you can trust and just be a bit open with. So I love that.
Yeah.
A lot of what you were saying there though, I like just relate to all of that, is when you were saying about, I was doing all of the things, I was trying to find the information and I was still struggling, let alone people that don't even know that information's out there or exists. Do you have any advice on where to start with that, who to listen to? If you can share a bit more about your background and in terms of how you got more into that and what makes a credible voice when it's talking about this kind of thing, to know what to listen to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, listen, you should always speak to a medical professional, and you should always speak to your doctor. And so it's a tricky one. Even when you're a menopause wellness coach like myself, also my background is in psychology, so I'm a psychologist, but regardless, you have to speak to your own doctor, because only your own doctor knows your history. So I could sit and give you advice until the sun comes home and everything that I've learned in terms of hormones, but I don't have access to your personal medical history. And there will be things in there from years ago that are relevant. And so that's why it's always still important to speak to your doctor. But it's really, really important to also note with that if you're not getting the help that you need from your doctor, you can ask for a second opinion. You can ask to speak to a different doctor. You can push to see a specialist. And so those are the things that women should be doing if they're not feeling like they can open up to their doctor, or they're getting the answers that not that they want, because it's not that you can get the answers that you want from your doctor. But if you don't feel like the doctor is looking into the right things or listening to you and you're getting the care that you should be getting, you should be asking to speak to somebody else. And that's important. But somebody else that has access to your history, your medical history. My background, like I said, I was born in Belfast. I grew up with 3 brothers. I studied psychology. I actually specialized in children's mental health, and a couple of years ago went back to study. And then it was actually because of my own symptoms that I was starting to notice, and the fact that I couldn't find information anywhere, and the types of information that would resonate with me and my friends. And I'll tell you a little story. Me and 2 of my best friends in a girls' group chat, all of us suffering from the exact same symptoms. We all went to our GPs, completely different GPs, some in different countries. We all went to the GP. One came out being offered antidepressants, one came out being offered vitamin B injections, and one came out being offered the coil. And that was it. I was like, this world, at the time I had a 7-year-old daughter, or, however old my daughter was. And I thought, this world, this is not good enough. This isn't good enough for our children coming up, that nobody has a clue. There's no direction of what's going on. And at the time, there was so much misinformation on social media. And so it was a very confusing time. And that's why I launched the House of Hormones. I extended my career. I studied nutrition. I studied hormones. I, did everything under the sun to make sure that I had all the information. I've worked with PTs to understand strength training in menopause. And then I've gone on to interview over 40 of the top doctors around the world on our podcast, including incredible doctors like Dr. Kelly Casperson, who's arguably one of my favorite. In February, we have Dr. Leah Chr, who's just been on Oprah. She's coming on the House of Hormones podcast. And so these conversations are there to ask the top doctors that are doing the clinical research and the clinical trials right now and have worked for years upon years with women, to ask them the questions that all of us want to know. And ask them, why has this been dismissed for so long? Why has women's health been dismissed for so long? Why do women still not know about vaginal estrogen? Why do people still think that they can't take that? Why do people who have suffered from breast cancer, why do they think that they can't take it when they can, right? But that's not to say that somebody should listen to a podcast and then go and try and start taking it. You must get a prescription. You must go and speak to your doctor. You must have these conversations. However, do bring in the questions from our podcast. Do bring in and say, the House of Hormones said this. Do question your doctor and say, well, that's not what I've heard. Why shouldn't you do that? And then allow them to tell you, well, actually, your case is different because of X, Y, Z on your medical history. And if they can't say that, then you need to be asking those questions. And again, that's back to advocating for yourself. So, at the House of Hormones, we're never claiming to be giving medical advice. We're claiming to be asking the big questions, trying to get you the answers, give you the advice, steer you in the right direction of the experts that you can trust. You'll hear me talk about so many different doctors and quote from so many different doctors that I have loved interviewing. We also interview lots of different celebs. We interviewed Amy Walsh on her experience of PCOS and how she experienced that and how that impacted her mental health and her physical health and everything that she went through. And there's so many stories. So not only is it trying to give every woman the information that they should have had, that they should have been taught in school, but it's also trying to give them the confidence and also let them know they're not on their own. Every single one of us has our own story, and you will be shocked. Like, regardless of where I go, that day when I was at that event and you came up and spoke to me afterwards, there was not one event that I've been to that I've spoken at that I haven't had a woman come up and cry afterwards or come up and speak to me and say, can I just ask one question? And, it's about really putting that fire back in women's bellies, because we just feel so deflated that we haven't been listened to for so long. And it's like, no, things are changing and you just need to keep pushing, because this isn't good enough and you deserve more. And there are answers and there is help out there. And I can absolutely fully say to women that they can feel better if they want to.
Yeah. And I think what led to me speaking to you afterwards was because right at the end of your session, I put my hand up and said, because you'd shared lots of information, and I said, I just wondered how, so I was diagnosed with PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoric disorder, at the beginning of last year. And I shared that and said, I just wondered how this impacted it. And he was like, I really want to speak to you. And prior to the beginning of last year, I don't even think I knew that PMDD was a thing. I'd never really heard about it before, but talking to you and your knowledge around that afterwards was really helpful and really interesting. So unless we start being a bit, and it's why I try to share on my social media and stuff like that as well, because I just think sometimes we need to hear other women talking about it or have access to, sessions like at Nikki's event where I could then speak to you, that you just wouldn't get that access kind of anywhere else.
And let's be really honest, social media has played a huge part. Now, listen, social media can also be a very negative space, but in women's health, social media has been a phenomenon because what it's allowed is the sharing of education. Sometimes it's misinformation, and this is why we need to be careful. But this is what the House of Hormones wants to do. We want to bring you the information that you can trust, the experts that you can trust. We've done the hard work so you don't have to type thing. So if you come to our page, you know that we've done our due diligence on all of this information. And PMDD has a special place in my heart because even if you go to, honestly, the amount of people that have told me that their doctors, their GPs didn't even know what PMDD was. And that's really worrying. And it's really worrying for me that people with PMDD have never been offered HRT and they've never looked. HRT has never been looked at in any other way apart from for menopause and perimenopausal symptoms. It hasn't been looked at for other symptoms, for example, like PMDD. And it can be hugely beneficial. And the mental health ups and downs that women who suffer from PMDD have to go through is just so unfair and it's so misunderstood. So, of course, conversation around antidepressants is always and should always be available for that. But as a second conversation, because there are things that can help before that. And there's also huge amounts of, and this blows my mind, huge amounts of nutritional value that can be added that isn't talked about. So GPs can't what do you hear from a GP? It sounds like I'm really digging out GPs here, and I'm absolutely not. I love GPs, and I just think it's unfair on them because they've been undertrained in this area, and that's not their fault. And they've kind of been thrown out to basically say to us, well, that looks normal. It's not their fault. GPs will say, do you have a balanced diet? They actually don't study nutrition. And actually, that's one of the biggest things that can help women around their hormones. And not a lot of people know that.
I did want to share what you said to me to go back to the doctors to say,
be careful because sometimes I'm like, go in and say this, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, so what you shared with me was to basically go back, like I'd had the blood test a few weeks before and I'd gone back and I'd got told that everything was normal. So one of the things that you'd said was about going back and saying, I understand that my blood results were normal, but are they optimal? That was one of the sentences you shared. So I went back and I did that. The other thing was around asking for a trial of HRT. And I think that was linked to the PMDD element of what I'd shared with you. He said no to that. He wasn't comfortable with that at all. And I think that was down to my age. And I also shared, because you told me that and it had only just happened as well. Because I remember when I spoke to you at the conference, it hadn't happened. It was happening the following week where the age had been low. It
happened in November. That's right. And we seen each other in the October. Yeah. And also there's more exciting things happening this year, right? So things are changing. But previously, for a doctor to take you seriously around a conversation about HRT, you would have needed to be 45 and above. And so doctors would very easily dismiss women under that age and push back. And that's what's really hard, because even a woman that's going to go and advocate for themselves and say, hey, I want to be considered for HRT, or is this a conversation? Can we start having this conversation? They would have been pushed back upon. And so then it's very difficult to book another appointment and come back and argue your case. So you don't want to be arguing with your doctor or feeling like you trust your doctor, and we've been conditioned to do so, and we should be able to trust our doctors. However, perimenopausal symptoms very normally start around 35, and if you suffer from PMDD, it's very likely that you're going to suffer a lot more. So, it should be a conversation that's being had from the age of 35. Now, the age changed very quietly. Not much was made of it. It was just changed onto the radar to the age of 40. So if you're aged 40 and above, you should not have any pushback when you bring up HRT. If you ask for a trial of HRT, unless there is a medical reason why you cannot do so, and your doctor should be able to tell you exactly why. But if there's no reason, then there should be no reason why you can't have a trial of HRT. And then they would follow that up within 3 months, and they would check how you're getting on and whether that would need changed, whether you would need a different dosage, whether it's actually not working very well for you. And so therefore you can look at other things. But realistically, that's changed to the age of 40. Coming in this year, all women over the age of 40 are to be offered a checkup. Okay, so over the age of 40, not just you're having symptoms and you're at the end of your tether and you book an appointment. All women are to be offered. What way this is going to play out, I don't know. But it sounds great, doesn't it? And it sounds like leaps and bounds forward. For me, this is my personal opinion. It should be age 35. But I understand why it's the age 40 as well, because not everybody suffers from symptoms. But what I would say is the education needs raised from way earlier on because of things like PCOS, PMDD, endometriosis. All of these things. We've got girls suffering for years thinking they just have heavy periods or they just, and so none of these things, all of these things have been pushed under the carpet, and none of these things should have been. But also every woman, every single woman who has a cycle, that cycle comes to an end. And that starts roughly between the ages of 35 and 45. And we know that. And then those symptoms can go on to last between 7 to 10 years. So from the age of 35, you should not be allowing yourself to get to the point where you are crumbling and you feel broken and you are having symptoms to the point where you just cannot cope anymore. You should have the education. And this is what we're on a mission to do, is to make sure that every woman knows the signs of what that looks like. So the second that you start feeling that, go and start that conversation. Don't allow yourself to be suffering from every single symptom or just increasing anxiety where it's impacting everything. It could be impacting your life, your children, your partner, your parents, your work, your career, your just leaving the house, your social life, your friendships. It could be impacting everything. And that's the problem. Women are being left until it's an emergency or they can no longer cope. And it doesn't have to be like that. And I'm on a mission to make sure that we change that. And we teach women that you don't have to wait until you're at the end of your tether to get support and help.
Well, and that was it. He did offer, so he wasn't comfortable giving me HRT, and it, to be fair, the change to 40 had happened like within those days. And he when I said it, he wasn't aware of it, and he wrote some things down and whatever. And then the other thing I asked for was a referral to the women's health specialist, which he did do for me. And I'm still waiting for the referral, but I did have the referral.
Yeah.
So, and then he wanted me to, which actually he'd given me an earlier appointment and I didn't take. And then he gave it to me again, which was the pill. So I'd been offered antidepressants or the pill. And I came away from that appointment with the referral to the women's health specialist and the pill. And I honestly thought my husband was going to throttle me because I said to him, I don't want to take the pill. And he was like, oh my God. He said, and I get it because obviously he is living with me really struggling. But he was like, you're not taking antidepressants. You won't take the pill. Like, you've got to try something. And I was like, look, I just want to try. So one of the other things that Leah recommended, which had been recommended to me before and I just never done anything about, was seed cycling. So I was like, just let me try seed cycling and let me see if it makes a difference. And if it does, brilliant. If it doesn't, then I will consider taking the pill until at least I get the referral to the women's health specialist. Anyway, I started seed cycling in probably November. So what's that, like 2.5 months? Oh my God. And obviously you can explain better than I can in a minute what seed cycling is and why it's beneficial. Like, it hasn't magically fixed anything, but it has made such a dramatic impact on how I feel and balancing. I feel way more balanced. It's not that I'm not low anymore or I don't get anxious or anything like that, but it feels so much more balanced. And yeah, I've been doing that for probably, granted, not that consistently. This is the first month I've been properly consistent with it, but it has made a massive difference to me, to the point that like my husband's now happy. I'm not taking, I will get the referral to the women's health specialist and see what she says. Because I know you'd also mentioned to me about testosterone and things like that, which can't be prescribed by a GP. But yeah, seed cycling has made such a difference to me.
And you know what? It's not necessarily, seed cycling's one thing and it's great. And loads of people say that it really works for them. Every single woman is different, right? So this is what can be quite it's so nuanced. So, for example, on social media, you can hear, you must take this, or you must take this supplement, or you must do this, and this is going to fix all your problems. The main thing is every single woman is different. So what works for you is not going to work for me, and it's not going to work for your friend. So of course you can share these things, and it's really great that people can listen and try it should they need the help. But it's really important that people don't take what I'm saying or the House of Hormones is saying as gospel, because at the end of the day, every single woman is different and will respond differently to medications, to supplements, and to nutrition. And so it's important to listen to your body and what symptoms you're having, and then try and type it. Seed cycling is something that was brought to me a couple of years ago, and I tried it and I noticed a difference. And so and I worked with so many different nutritionists, and it's just incredible. And essentially there's a free download on our website. So I would urge anyone to go and look at thehouseofhormones.com and go to our free download section, which is in our education section. And you can find loads of different free downloads there. You can find a symptom tracker, which is so useful. I think everybody should be tracking their symptoms. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But if you have an appointment coming up, for example, you've got your specialist, hopefully your specialist appointment is coming up soon. And I would urge you that for the 3 months in the run up to that, or, at least 1 month in the run up to that, you should be tracking your symptoms as you go, because it's so easy to walk into a room and completely forget everything and how you felt a couple of weeks ago and how bad it got, and the fact that you couldn't drive your car or you were shouting at your kid, whatever it may be, however your symptoms are manifesting themselves. But it's really important that you write that down and you're able to bring it in. And I think that's a great tool for advocating for yourself. But back to the seed cycling. It basically is essentially taking seeds at different times of your cycle. So if you're still cyclical, you can take different seeds, and that's to kind of help you. But look, listen, with all these things, and when you go to our free download section, again, we have loads of different guides, like, for example, workouts to do in different sections of your cycle and foods to eat in different stages of your cycle. I cannot say enough that every single person is different. And so your body, your cycle is different to mine. So that is a guide, but it is not to say what is right for you. Only you can track your symptoms and go, actually, that really worked for me, or yes, that seed cycling really worked I'm going to integrate that. And so it's great that you've raised that, and I would urge people, but the only way you get to find that out is to try things, right? And so, for example, like, I'm on a total protein thing at the minute, and I have to laugh every time I speak with my peers. We say, honestly, trying to fit in enough protein in your diet, which as a perimenopausal woman is over 100 grams a day, by the way. So trying to fit that into your diet is like a full-time job. And I spoke to one of the episodes coming up on our podcast is with the gut health doctor, Dr. Megan Rossi, who I absolutely adore. And she's thrown another spanner in the works because, she says how important it is to not eat all your protein at once and to make sure you're spreading that out throughout the day, because your body can actually only absorb a certain amount of protein at a time. And so, where we think there's a lot of information and seed cycling and protein and this, there's a lot of all these things coming out and we're being overwhelmed with it. But what you've got to remember is this research wasn't done before. People didn't know this before. So it's not that these are made up gimmicks. It's the fact that actually it wasn't studied, and now it has been studied and it's been proven to help. But if it's not helping you, don't think that it's a load of rubbish and that's not true. Just think, actually, maybe I'm different and something else might work for me. And so therefore you need to find what that is. And again, I hate to say it, sounds so cliche, but that's advocating for yourself by trying new things. One of the most important things based on diet, nutrition, and I don't care what anyone says, this is my opinion, and I say it to everyone. When you're starting to focus on your diet and your nutrition as a woman, which you 100% should be before anything else, start thinking about what to add in before you start thinking about what you need to take out. So before you start, okay, we all know sugar's bad for us, okay? But before you put so much pressure on yourself and you try and go on this, diet or whatever it is, start with adding some seeds, some chia seeds. Start with adding some extra protein, making sure that just start with one thing because it is overwhelming. And the last thing that we need to do when we're already feeling the shifts of hormonal imbalance, whether it's because you suffer from PCOS, whether it's because you're perimenopausal, whether it's your daughter during puberty, the last thing we need is more pressure. So constantly more things to do, more things on our agenda. We don't need that. So just try and start small and make the small shifts and the small little habits. And honestly, those habits then stack up, habit stacking. But it just really does become a game changer, and it really does make such a difference.
And I think it's making it as simple as possible for yourself, isn't it? Like where you can do, because I think what you just said about it being really overwhelming, that's why I was probably told about seed cycling at least a year before I actually tried it. And it was because every time I even looked at it, it just felt really overwhelming, which in hindsight feels a little bit ridiculous because it was basically a case of taking some seeds every day. But because it had said it was better to have them ground because your body absorbs them better. And then that stressed me out because I was like, oh God, well, I haven't got the time to do this, that, and the other. And what I ended up doing when I did eventually try it at the end of last year was there is a business where I buy the seeds ready, done through, and you have phase 1 and phase 2, and you just take 2 tablespoons of each, depending on what stage of your cycle you're at. And to start with, I'd seen them a few months earlier, but I was like, oh my God, it's like £25 a month. I think it's cheaper if you subscribe for like an ongoing thing. But again, in hindsight, I was like, oh my God, how was I questioning £25 a month for something that's made such a dramatic impact to me? And like you said, it might not for everyone, but I basically said, right, I'll try it and I'll try it for 3 months and see what the difference is. And if it works, then my God, is it worth that? Well, I think I've got it for 20 quid a month now that I've actually signed up for sort of like a repeat one.
Yeah. And it's also like we work a lot with Linwood. So when we do events and stuff, Linwood's always send us samples and we do giveaways and stuff with them because they have a great range of grounded seeds. And I just think, it's the difference of adding a spoonful or whatever the dosage might be that you need to your whatever your breakfast is, or to your dinner, or to your salad, or whatever it is that you're going to be having. So it's just little things like that. And I think, the problem is as well, and I'm speaking more so about perimenopause here, we weren't educated about it. And so it kind of feels like when you start having symptoms and then, all your algorithm starts sending you all of those things, it's almost too late then. And then you start feeling really overwhelmed because you're already having symptoms and all of a sudden you're starting to learn about what's actually happening and you never actually knew that this was coming. So that's a big bit of the problem. What I'm really trying to push now is, why do we know? And I'm a big fan of nature, so I think it's important to still learn about these things. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but why can my children come home from school and tell me the whole lifespan of a caterpillar to a butterfly or a tadpole to a frog? Why can they do that? Yet they cannot come home, a girl cannot come home and tell me everything about their biology and tell me the name of every single stage of their cycle, and also what happens pregnancy, if some people get pregnant, and then also talking about perimenopause to menopause to postmenopause. Why is that not taught? Why do we not know about that? Why is it still a shock to women aged 35 and over? Why is it still a shock that this is coming? And so why are people not prepared? And why do women not know that nutrition is huge for them? Why do we not know? For example, even if we talk down to gaining weight, which is one of the symptoms, but something that women are obviously always trying not to do for health reasons, but also for vanity reasons. And I'm guilty of that. But taking protein and there's, eating healthy is a huge part of that. And yet it's something that we're just not taught enough about. And it blows my mind. I mean, that's something that at the House of Hormones we're massively working on in 2026 of How do we educate younger? Of course, there's more education now than we got in our day, back in school on periods and, sex education, etc. But still, the mention of perimenopause, perimenopausal symptoms, menopause, postmenopause is nowhere to be seen. It's not mentioned, yet we still come home talking about the whole lifespan of different animals. And I think it's crazy.
100%. And that's why I loved your session at Wild Alive. It's why I love all the work that you're doing and your socials and your podcasts and all that kind of thing. Because like you said about the age limit lowering, like it feels like a really small, slow step, but it's not actually. Like it's a massive step. And
Yeah.
yes, we'd like it to happen quicker, but and you said about some of the things that are happening this year, like they are all massive steps forward. So when I think about my 9-year-old daughter, by the time she is my age, like how much more information she's going to have, partly from, mums or dads or whoever educating themselves, but also hopefully through like the school system or just the things that are out there. I did want to just quickly ask, one of the things that we were talking about at the very beginning was tuning into your hormones. Like, what does that actually mean in practice? And how would you suggest someone sort of started going around that? Is that what you were saying around tracking basically your cycle and how you feel and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, exactly that. So like I said, if you go to our website and you go to the free download section, firstly you can download a tracker, but you can also download different cycle charts that we have. And it kind of shows you typically how you would feel in your cycle. So if you were tracking your cycle, or if you're having perimenopausal symptoms and actually you're not having a cycle, or if you're postmenopausal, the idea is start listening to your body. So if, for example, I'll give you some really kind of, everyday examples. If you keep snapping at the kids, like way more than you normally do, we all snap at the kids, by the way, and we all get to the end of our tether with the kids. But if it's way more, or if you can go from 0 to 100 and you keep catching yourself and thinking, and if you just don't feel like yourself, if you're starting to feel, write it down and write down where in your cycle that is. Okay. Or if you are, for example, it's January, you might be on a bit of a health kick. You might think, oh, I'm going to be really healthy and I'm eating. If you're just uncontrollably craving whatever type of food it may be, write it down, because the week after you might feel completely different. Write it down. If you're just constantly having negative thoughts and you just keep talking negatively about yourself, write it down. All of these things are, even if you're just writing it down for yourself and it's not to bring into the doctor, or it's not to, just start listening to yourself. Your body's trying to tell you something. And, or if you're so tired, that was one of the things that I started noticing. My eyes would sting. I was so tired at like 2 o'clock. So we're, 2 p.m. or whatever time in the day. It was like I needed to go to bed. Yet as when I went to bed, wired, but tired. So write it down, don't just, I think, again, women are so used to, we've been conditioned to just take on everything, haven't we? And so we're currently living in a society where we're being everything to everyone. Okay. And also we're all running full-time jobs, looking after kids, looking after parents, and I know I was doing all of those things. And so I think the problem is we're not tapping into ourselves and our bodies and understanding our own needs and understanding what is normal. And I hate the word normal, but what is normal for us and what's not. And so we're not even seeing the difference of what's, whether you're tired because you've been working and you've been up with a baby last night or whatever it is, or whether it's your hormones. And so by tuning into yourself and really looking at your symptoms and then starting to notice if there's a pattern, right? So if it was just because the baby was up last night and, or, your kids were sick, you had sickness in the house last week, or, it might be one of those things, but it actually might be nothing to do with that. And actually this might be something that's happening quite a lot. And then you can say, aha, something's wrong. I need to speak to someone.
And that is a really powerful thing to do, as I can say, as someone who did that. I only ever really tracked my cycle to know when I was going to come on my period, so to know when I was going to be bleeding. But for a while I did track it because I was starting to feel a certain way. And the point I went to the doctor, because it was really interesting for me that I'd have 1 or 2 days a month where I couldn't stop crying. So I live in Liverpool, but my family all live down south. like my mum, my dad, my sisters, and there'd be a couple of days a month where I just full blown resented my husband for living in Liverpool, and I couldn't stop crying. I just wanted to be back there. It made no sense whatsoever. And then over a couple of 2-3 months, I started to realize it was pretty much at the same time every month. And for
Yeah.
me, at that point, I hadn't gone to doctor, but for me, I was like, "Oh, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to feel better in a couple of days." And then I don't know how long later it was, but basically the point I went to the doctor was when that started to extend out into like it was 7 to 10 days that I was feeling like that, and it was taking over. Obviously, that's quite debilitating when it's like a third of the month. But looking, I was like, oh well, that's my hormones. Maybe as I'm getting older or as I'm doing this, and I was able to tell the doctor all of that when I went in, and that's when I'd got diagnosed with, or eventually got diagnosed with PMDD. So yeah,
Exactly. And you know what? If you can't do something like that to advocate for yourself, right? Because as I keep saying, as women, we've been conditioned to kind of always put ourselves last and not. So if you can't pick someone, pick your kids, pick your husband, pick your mum, and do it for them. So use that as a vehicle to tune into yourself and say, right, I'm going to track this now because it's having a negative effect on them. And you have no idea how much this could, and also by opening up to whoever it is you might be in a relationship with, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a husband, whether, opening up and saying, hey, I've started tracking this and look, and letting them in and letting them see that, because you've no idea of the amount of support that could be available on the other end of that. And as we know, going back to perimenopause, this is the most point where people get divorced. And it's quite obvious why, because there's such a loss of connection and a real misunderstanding of what's going on between two people. And so if you can also open that door to those conversations and allow somebody else to see what you've tracked and what you've noticed yourself, honestly, it can be really, really life-changing.
it can also get to the point. I mean, my poor husband, I don't know whether it's like a I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing for him, but I now actually put like my approximate luteal phase in our calendar, partly for me, so that I can plan around that if I'm asked to do things socially. But also he can sometimes go, oh, okay, this isn't about me. She doesn't hate me. Like this is just, so that can be quite fun to do.
Exactly that. This is why in our free downloads we have men cheat sheets too, so men can actually understand what's going on, because it's like I said in one of my earlier points, if you don't know, you don't know. Okay, so you don't know what you don't know. And so therefore we can't expect men to understand how one day you're literally ready to divorce them or kill them, or they're even the sound of them breathing just makes you want to explode and combust. And then the next day you're like, oh, hi. And everything in. But how can they understand that? There's no way. And so you have to and convey that to them.
Yeah, and it is hard for them as well. Like they need to be able to have the conversations around that as well. One final question, and this is quite a big question, I realise, but what is the one thing you would love someone listening to this to take away from it?
I think listen, we're on a mission at the House of Hormones to try and make sure that every woman can have access to as much education as humanly possible. And so I think we just want women to be able to, I hate to say it, advocate for themselves, go back, book that appointment, ask to see a different doctor. If you are having symptoms, believe yourself. So believe yourself before you have to go in and then make someone else believe you. Because for too long, women have been dismissed, misdiagnosed, mismedicated, and it has to stop. But it stops with us. And so if I could say one thing is, if you're having symptoms, please believe yourself. Listen to your body. Your body's telling you something. It's whispering something to you. Listen to it. Believe yourself. And no one is getting away from having any type of, perimenopausal symptoms or, different changes, different hormonal changes. So just start focusing on that, and you can live a much healthier, happier life if you're tuned into that. And that would be my message to everybody. And for those women who maybe say, I don't get any symptoms, I don't, brilliant and good for you. But you should still know, because you will have a daughter or a mother or a friend or a sister who will need that information, and they will need you to advocate for them. So all of these messages are still relevant for you. It's still important that you know it. And I just think, try and lift as many women as you can up. Like we said, Becky, we started by talking about an incredible event by an incredible lady that we were both at. And it is a really inspirational time and a real change in time for women. So I would urge us all to lean into that, to help each other, support each other. Women are constantly kind of pitted against each other. And, we're sold this story that women don't support women. That's not true. That's not what I've seen. And that's not true. And I think it's time for us all to come together, stop believing all of that type of stuff, and just start putting each other on pedestals and start supporting each other and listening to each other and believe in each other. So many times in this conversation, you even spoke about not feeling like you would be believed, whether it was by the receptionist, whether it was by the doctor, whether it was by your husband, whether it was by, you almost felt like a burden onto yourself. We need to stop that. This isn't our fault. We can change things. We can make things better. And there is help for us out there, and we can go and get it.
I can't tell you how much I love all of that. And especially it almost gave me goosebumps, that believe yourself. And I think it's partly because of the journey I've been on. And I just I suppose partly sharing from me as well. What I found difficult at one point was that I was booking a doctor's appointment when I was at my lowest and feeling terrible. But obviously you have to wait for a doctor's appointment. And 2 weeks later, by the time I'd see him, I'd be like, I actually feel all right now.
Yeah.
And so then I'd start to question myself.
That's the tracking, because you will forget that you felt that bad. So
Yeah.
that's tracking.
Yeah. Or you will, like you said at some point in this conversation about gaslighting yourself, you will be like, was it that bad? And that was another really helpful thing about having my husband in the appointment with me, because he was like, yeah, it was that bad.
Yeah.
It was that you were feeling that low. So honestly, I can't thank you enough for your time. Where is the best place for people to come and find out more about you?
Yeah, so lots of different things and ways for people to get involved with the House of Hormones. Firstly, just to say, to be part of our community is completely free. So just head to the website. It's www.thehouseofhormones.com. Don't forget the. And you can join our community there in various different ways. We have our free download section, and it's in our education section, but we also have a forum on our website, a place that's a safe place for women to go and ask questions. We see a lot of, this is happening to me. Is this normal? And so you can create a completely anonymous account, and you can go and chat to other women and share your stories, or give advice to other women and say, hey, yeah, that did happen to me, and make sure somebody doesn't feel on their own. So it's a really lovely, safe place to go and do that. And I would encourage anyone to get involved with that. We also obviously follow us on Instagram. It's at the House of Hormones. We have loads of really fun giveaways, etc., that go on there, and lots of, funny ways to look at our hormones. It's not all doom and gloom. We can have a bit of a laugh. So that's a nice place for us all to have a bit of a laugh together. One thing I will say that we're doing a lot of in 2026, which is really fun. There's a lot of noise around different products and all these products that are coming on the women's health market, and whether they work, and this perimenopause coffee, and this supplement's doing this and this. So the House of Hormones are essentially doing lots of different studies throughout the year. We've already done about 6, and you can sign up to join. They're called our in-house studies. You can find it on the website, and you can sign up to join. What we do is we ask the products that are making the claims to help X, Y, and Z, send free products to our community. Our community test it, and then we'll have a dedicated group chat in the forum where you can see the women that are part of that study taking that product, what they're saying about it. So it's really exciting, because even if you're somebody that is looking for a certain product, you can go in and look at those chats and see what women have been saying about that exact product. And we are, as always, on the side of our community. We are not on the side of the brands. We are on the side of our community. But it's really important to say there are loads of amazing brands and products coming out for women that haven't previously been there. And why shouldn't we have more product, is my opinion. So a lot of people are talking about meno washing and how these products are trying to, make money out of women. Why shouldn't we have more products that we love if they are helpful? So the House of Hormones in-house studies are trying to figure out what's helpful and what's not. So you can find more information, and you can join it, again, completely free for our community to join. You just need to be one of the first people, to sign up, because some studies are done on 100 women, some studies are done on 50. It just depends on the product. So if you want to take part in that, please feel free to join. And yeah.
I really love that. And I love the chance for a bit of a freebie to try out as well and see how you get on with it. And I will also link to, because it is also excellent, your podcast in the show notes as well. So people can go and listen to that, because the more you listen to, the more you learn, don't you? And you can pick out the bits that help you and are relevant to you and all that kind of stuff.
And we're currently just recording for series 2, but honestly, some of the guests on series 2, it's so good. Honestly, because I'm not claiming to have all the information. So some of the stuff that I even learn, I am shocked. There is an episode, I'll tell you, you have to watch out for, Becky, with Dr. Hilary Jones, the ITV's heartthrob doctor. And honestly, he is very, very funny. So that episode is a definite. If you're going for a walk, or if you're, cleaning the house or anything like that, you must pop that episode on.
Oh, amazing. I will definitely listen to that. But yeah, thank you so much for your time today. Honestly, it's been absolutely brilliant.
Thanks for having me. Sending you lots of love.
Thank you so much for tuning in. I am truly grateful for your time and energy today. I know you've got a million things on your plate, and the fact that you are here investing your time into something that will help yourself, your business, and your socials grow is something I am really proud of you for. Before you go though, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I've got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence, and community. It's a place where we ban the word should, because we believe in bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life, and your business. As a member, you'll get a clear content plan every month, ready-to-use templates, and the accountability to actually show up. Plus, you'll have expert support and a community of incredible women who get it and who want to cheer you on and support you in your business journey. Think of it like having a teeny tiny social media marketing expert in your pocket, giving you the knowledge and the assurance when it comes to posting great, engaging content on your social media platforms and showing up in a way that grows your business without the overwhelm. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your social media to the next level, Boss Your Socials Club has everything you need. You can join from just £14 a month or save with an annual membership. The link is in the show notes. Thank you again for being here today, and I can't wait to catch you in the next episode. Until then, take care and keep showing up.